Good morning. Greetings from San Diego, California. My name is Lilly Cheng. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I've been asked to talk to the parents over in Boston area about the topic of how do I know if my bilingual child has a speech and language disorder. So that would be the topic. We're going to break this session into 4 parts. The first part is, who is a bilingual child? The second part is, what is a speech disorder? And the third part is, what is a language disorder? And finally, other concerns. Okay, so we're going to break it into 4 parts, as I said, and I want to then talk about bilingualism. In the world, there are more bilingual and multilingual people than monolingual people. That's a statement that I want to make right now. Many people in this world speak 1 language. Many people in this world speak 2 languages, and many people in this world speak more than 2 languages. Now, some of the people encounter difficulties in speaking a language or 2 languages or 3 languages and more. Others do not experience such difficulties. So, the question that we want to ask is, what is a bilingual child? In general, a bilingual child is someone who can use 2 languages. And perhaps an even better definition is a child is able to understand 2 languages. A child may not be able to speak 2 languages equally well. And so when we have an issue in a school setting, it is because this person, this child, understands minimally the school language, but may understand his or her home language quite well. Now imagine a bilingual situation. That is 2 people speaking 2 languages to each other. That would be a bilingual situation. In that kind of a situation, people code switch. They can use 1 language and switch to the next, or they can use 1 language and insert some language phrases from another language into this language. So that's called code switching or code mixing. So most bilingual individuals do that naturally. So if a child is exposed to 2 languages at home, this is what he or she is experiencing. That is 2 languages plus language mixing and language switching and code switching. Now, in the home environment, in the United States, there are hundreds of languages being spoken at home. The degree of fluency at home of the home language is different. The degrees are different. We have people at home who use a lot of code switching, but we also have parents and grandparents at home who may speak the home language only. Now, in the cases of refugees, migrants, immigrants, and asylum seekers, we have many, and stateless people here in the United States. We have many linguistic conditions at home. So to understand a bilingual child, we must first understand what is going on at home. A child spends more time at home and in the community than at school. So it is very important we get a home language or languages environment survey and understanding before we define who is a bilingual child. So now we get that straightened out. We can then say the quality of the home language and home languages, the quality is very important. I can say that in many situations, the quality of the home language is just maintenance home language. What is a maintenance home language? It is for the parents or grandparents or caretakers to use the home language to maintain a peaceful environment at home. That would be a home maintenance situation. I hope this is good enough for you to begin to think about the question of the bilingual child. So my second topic is speech disorder. What is a speech disorder? Let me make it clear that although we say speech and language disorders, we really need to know what a speech disorder is. Okay, it is a term that is used widely among speech language pathologists, and we have a clear definition of what a speech disorder is. I want to give you first an example of a word that has a sound disorder, okay? And I'm going to use Chinese, Mandarin, to give you an example. If we're looking for the target word, which is 裤子, which means a pair of pants, and the child says 兔子, which is a rabbit, that would be a speech disorder. That is, the child is using t, tu for k, ku, and it's also called a substitution. That means the sound of g is replaced by the sound t, t for k, and we also call it fronting. That means the front part of the tongue is being used, or the front of the mouth is being used. So if we're looking for 裤子 and the child says 兔子, that's a substitution, and that's a speech disorder, purely a speech disorder. So as an adult, when the child is looking for that pair of pants and she or he calls it 兔子, we know he or she is not looking for rabbit, but for a pair of pants. Okay, another example would be a tonal example for Chinese again. If we're looking for blanket, it's called 被子. And if we're looking for a cup, it's 杯子. So 杯子 and 被子, we have a tonal disorder. 杯 is the first tone, and 杯 is the fourth tone. So if a child is looking for 杯子 and he calls it 被子, you know we have a tonal discrimination issue, which also results in a speech disorder. Now, for English, I want to give an example. Again, I will use the word rabbit. Rabbit starts with the sound rabbit. And if a child says webbit, that is using the W for the R. So webbit instead of rabbit, again, is a speech disorder. It is very, very common. Another speech type of disorder would be a sh and a ch, a difference. If you want to say a piece of chalk, it comes out a piece of shock, then you know it's sh, a ch, a disorder. It's also called a speech disorder. Now, if a child has many such speech sound disorders, he or she may become unintelligible in speech. So for speech disorders, we usually say if the child is unintelligible or 10% intelligible, 90% unintelligible, then it is very, very difficult for us to understand what he or she is saying. Now this is important. As a child develops his or her sound patterns, or we call it the sound speech repertoire, we will encounter many situations where this child will have difficulties with what we call the more difficult sounds. So in the beginning, usually a child will be able to say pa, ba, ma. Those are the frontal plosive sounds and nasal sounds. And then we might go to ta, da, na. They can say those. And eventually they'll be able to say ka and ga and ng. And then in this process, they may be able to say s, and then eventually sh, s, and so on. So in a bilingual situation, let's say we're dealing with Chinese and English, there will be some sounds that are not part of the Chinese repertoire, but they are part of the English repertoire. A good example is the sound v, so it's very good instead of very good or very good. Or th, like 1, 2, 3, rather than 1, 2, 3. I hope I have given you a glimpse into the world of speech disorders. So, this third topic here is language disorder. As I said earlier, many people lump speech disorder and language disorder together. Indeed, it is possible, because if a speech pattern is unintelligible, then how can you even understand language? So language is what people use to communicate. It can be oral, it can be written, and it can be spatial, meaning a sign language. So all these are ways of dealing with human communication, using symbols to write, to express meaning, or using sounds to talk, to express emotions and meaning, or use signs to show I love you and its meaning. So languages are used to transport meaning, to communicate from one person to the next. So if I speak Mandarin and you speak English, then it is very difficult to communicate. So if a person has a language disorder, the person will have difficulty communicating. That is a general statement. So what happens if a person truly has a language disorder? Then I would explain to you there are many different areas of concerns. The first part is the person may have difficulty reading this language, whether it's Farsi, Mandarin, Chinese, or English. If reading is a problem, then we call it a reading disorder. And this person then cannot read easily. And the messages on the written pages are not being understood. Or a person may have a writing disorder, that is, the person can read, but he or she cannot write very well. We consider this a writing disorder. And then in this case, we have dyslexia, problem writing, dysgraphia, problem reading and writing. And then we have people who are born with the inability or difficulty in grasping language in general. That is a language disorder. It is childhood aphasia, the loss of language, even at the beginning of life. Now, in terms of general language disorder, we have reading, we have writing, and then of course we have comprehension. That is, we have an auditory discrimination problem or anything dealing with the hearing side, such as hearing loss. You will not be able to hear the language. If you cannot hear the language clearly, you're not going to be able to speak it. Now, the speaking part is speech plus speech with words and combination of words into an expressive language. So we can have a receptive language disorder, an expressive language disorder, we can have a reading disorder, we can have writing disorder, or we can have an overall language disorder that would be called specific language impairment. And on top of this, we may have some issues with cognition that would be called a language learning disorder. So all of these are very complex. It is not something that can be explained very easily. However, if a person experiences a language disorder, then he or she will have difficulty in learning and in schools. So this is very important. I would like to stress that early detection of speech disorder or language disorder is very necessary. How can early detection be accomplished? It is at home. So parents must be quite vigilant in learning about these types of disorders in order to understand the special needs of their children and to also understand better what it is that we're dealing with in terms of a language disorder. So it's a spectrum from very difficult to understand speech to difficulty in understanding and expressing language. So now, in the case of a bilingual child, if this bilingual child has a language disorder, then he or she will have a language disorder in his or her native or home language. So it is very clear to me that it is not possible for a person who has a language disorder and that disorder is only exhibited in the home language or only exhibited in the school language. A language disorder is a disorder in the acquisition of symbols and in the deciphering of symbols and also in the expression of symbols. Thank you. That hopefully is good enough for you to understand language disorder. Now we get to the fourth topic, and I call it other concerns. There are just so many areas that I would like to talk to you about. But more importantly, I'll just specify at this time the few concerns that I have. Okay, let me first start with hearing. Okay, as I said earlier, if you cannot hear clearly, you're not going to be able to understand the full essence of messages, whether it's a message at home, a command at home, a description at home, reading a story at home, watching a television program at home, or just simply enjoying a home environment, such as eating together, playing games together. All of those things require good hearing. So early screening is very important. Now in the United States, as I understand it, most children get early newborn screening. Newborn screening will help us understand the hearing condition of a baby. Now this is not always the best way, but at least we get a screening. Once we realize that the child is not hearing, we must do something early. Early intervention for hearing disorder is crucial for him or her to become capable of hearing the language or languages of his or her environment and school. So hearing is the most important part as far as I'm concerned in the early detection of any problem dealing with listening to the language and then expressing the language. Now there is a confusion that I must explain here. We say deaf and mute or deaf and dumb. Those words can never be used ever again. People who cannot hear can communicate effectively. For centuries, people who are not able to hear have been using sign languages to communicate effectively. They can also learn written language, for sure. So we must make sure we understand this part. Why is a deaf person mute? It is because there is no stimulation auditorily. That's why he or she cannot hear and cannot then sound accordingly, make sounds accordingly. So there is really no mute person. We are talking about hearing loss or deafness. Today, I can say it with 100% assurance that many newborns and young children can benefit from the science and technology that we have developed over time. So cochlear implant is wonderful to help these people. Cochlear implant and also reconstruction and also hearing aids. There are many, many things that we can do to create a better hearing environment for those who are having difficulty with listening and hearing. So this is the first part I want to say. The second part of speech language concerns is in terms of organic types of problems. Organic types of problems would be in terms of the structure of the speech mechanism. They could be lips, they could be the tongue, they could be dental issues, they could be the cleft palate, or anything in the oral mechanism. There also could be some issues with the nasal passages. Now we're dealing now with simply here, this part. Now if there is any concern with the speech mechanism, we need to go to see an ENT doctor and a surgeon to correct that. I'm talking about cleft palate, cleft lip, or any type of possibility inside the oral cavity that might be problematic. Children who are born with different types of challenges will have to deal with those issues. Let's just say that we have a child with a very high arch, a palatal arch. This child's tongue may be sticking out more, resulting in what we call a lisp, a frontal lisp. For example, a child would be saying things with the tongue coming out, sticking out. That is because many times the arch is too high. We may have other issues with lateral lisp, meaning the tongue sticks out to both sides or one side. It could be unilateral or could be bilateral. These are the kind of concerns we're dealing with. So I hope you have a sense of what speech and language difficulties may be a result of organic difficulties. Thank you very much.